Here is my 2-minute sermon. You ready?
Yep.
God speaks. I should just end there. That would have been so smart. God speaks. This is Jesus' words. He says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand." I had a mentor or maybe just a pastor friend when I was in high school, and his name was Ray Arnold. He's a mixed guy, half black, half white, from Cincinnati, Ohio. Guy was awesome. He was the corniest dude ever, but he was awesome. And anytime Pastor Ray would come up to me, he would always start with a "your breath" joke. Like, that was just his first. He's like, "Oh, do you smell that?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, it's your upper lip." And I'm like, "Man, shut up." And so that was Ray Arnold. But Ray Arnold was this incredible guy who was just loved Jesus. You know those people that you get around and you're like, "Oh, you know God." You know what I'm saying? Like, you just get around them and you sense something about them where they just know God. That was Ray. And Ray, for all throughout my high school years, would just spend time with me and show me how he hears God's voice. And so he would do different things where he'd come over, he'd let me come over to his house with his family, and he'd make some good dinner because he's from Cincinnati. And then he'd just talk to me about different ways that we can learn to listen to God's voice. And so sometimes we'd sit in his living room with just a chair, and we would just be quiet before the Lord and just listen and allow whatever to come out and start to filter and think through how to hear God's voice. Ray looked at me one day and he said, "Christian, you need 2 things to hear God's voice. Just 2 things." I said, "Just 2?" He said, "Yeah, just 2 things to hear God's voice." He goes, "What do you think those are?" And I had no idea what he was going to say. He said, "Christian, you need time and you need space to hear God's voice." That's it. Time and space. Time carved out to listen, and space, not physically, thank God, but mentally, emotionally, in your heart, in the quiet of your own mind, of your own thoughts. Like, you can be in a busy room and still have space, space in here. He said, "Christian, you need time and space to hear God." And I think as I've learned and grown, and I'm turning 28 next week, and so I'm just a little bit older than, well, actually, not now. Frick, I'm 10 years older than some of you? Dang. Okay, anyway, 10, whatever, that's not that old. But in the years, I think in my own life, I can say, like, humbly, that I've learned in certain ways how to hear God's voice and feel comfortable saying that. And the thing I've learned with that is that time and space, it's what we need. And I think in our life, in our world, and in our community, time and space are probably 2 of the things that you feel like you don't have most often, right? How much do we complain about not having enough time, and then your roommate, space? And so what we need to do is learn how to create that in our own lives. And so what I want you to do is, well, first of all, 2 things. Over the next, in this semester, we're going to do a 21-day devotional on how to hear God. It's an opportunity, and we wrote this to create time and space in our own community to hear God's voice. And I'd really encourage you, when that thing starts on Tuesday, to open your app or your computer or whatever, crack that open in the morning, and use that app to create time and space to learn how to hear God's voice. But the second thing you can do, and we do it in church tradition, it's called a rule of life. And so we created one from Northwest, one more thing to scan, or you have your app. So open up your app real quick, and if you click on formation in your app, or you just use that link, it'll open up a Dropbox full of different resources on different resources we're providing. And one of them in there is called the NU Rule of Life Worksheet. It's essentially a way that we created and ask questions that offer time and space, that help us create time and space to hear God's voice in our own life. And so they look through different activities, different parts of our life. So whether that's your relationship with Jesus, your relationship with friends, body and sexuality, it looks at our work and our purpose, our mission and generosity. And so what I'd encourage you to do in the next, over the next week is take a few minutes, read through that, and carve out some time and space practically for your own life on how you can hear God's voice. How can you and I create not rules as in strict, but rules as in this is how I navigate my life. This is what rules me. The same way that your steering wheel rules your car, but you would never call that legalistic. Same way, we have a rule of life that helps guide us through life, in our life with God. And so what I want you to do, we have a few minutes left, and I will end on time, is take a second, and I want you to just flip through that, and maybe just start at the first section, relationship with Jesus. Open it up and click on, it's again the NU Rule of Life Worksheet. and open up to the section that says relationship with Jesus and just read it over and consider that today. Maybe take today or a few minutes tonight to answer that question. How can I carve out space and time to hear God's voice, to have a deeper relationship with Jesus? What you do, take a minute or two, and then we're going to dismiss in just a minute or two, and the scanners will be out there, so Grace will come up in a moment and do that. But just real quick before we do that, I just ask you, just take a moment, kind of in the quiet, open up your phone, read through that, and prayerfully consider how can you make space in your own life for Jesus this semester.